Hey guys, today's lesson is going to be something very familiar to you. We're going to talk about equations of lines in the coordinate plane. And our first vocabulary term is going to be slope. So I'm going to go ahead and write that on the screen if Lucy will move out of my way. Hi, Lucy. Yes, hi. Okay. So, slope. Remember that slope is the ratio of the vertical change to the horizontal change. Rise over run, the ratio of rise to run, and it's between any 2 points. So I have a picture on the right side that I drew of an equation, the green line, and to go from the bottom point on the left to the top point on the right, I rose and then I ran. And so the slope is change in y over change in x. Oopsies. Let's try that again. Change in y over change in x. And so you need to make sure you know that. That little triangle is called delta, and that is a Greek symbol meaning change. So we need to remember that the slope, which is also represented by the letter m, equals the change in y over the change in x. So when we're trying to find the slope of any line, we're going to subtract the y's, put them on top, and subtract the x's and put them on the bottom. A positive slope is one that goes in this direction on a graph. Negative slope goes in this direction. A zero slope is a horizontal line, and an undefined slope is vertical. So you need to make sure that you know all of those pictures. You need to be able to represent that, and you need to be able to use that to answer a certain question. The next thing you need to know is what's called the slope-intercept form. And this is a form to write the equation. And this is one that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. Y equals mx plus b. Remember that m is the slope and that b is the y-intercept. And we've talked about that a little bit in class before, just to kind of refresh your memory. So, okay, I just need to fix that because I don't have a C in there. All right, there we go. So, slope-intercept form is one of the forms that you need to know, and then the other one is the point-slope form. I want to remind you that these are forms that you need to have memorized because when you take the SAT next year, the test does not give you all of these equations, and you're going to need to know when to use them, why to use them, and how to use them. So these are two forms that you need to make sure you know. These are forms of linear equations. Alright, so our first example is going to find the slope of a line that's containing 2 points. The 2 points we have are 4, -2 and -1, 2. When you're doing these kinds of questions, sometimes it can be very helpful to you to just kind of plot on the side, draw a little mini graph, and then plot those points so you know whether your slope is supposed to be positive or negative, if your slope's going to be 0, if you're going to have an undefined slope. It can be helpful to you so that way when you get your answer, you know what you were supposed to get, and if you didn't get what you were supposed to get, then you messed up somewhere, and that kind of is a trigger to let you know that you need to go back and check your work. But of course, it's not required. It's just something that you can use. So what we're going to do is subtract the y's and put those on top, and then subtract the x's and put those in the bottom. I'm going to call this x1, this y1, this x2, and this y2. So on the top, y2 minus y1 over the bottom, x2 minus x1. 2 minus -2 becomes a positive, so that becomes 4. -1 minus 4 becomes -5. That is our slope. All right, so now we're going to practice actually graphing a line. And when you graph a line, you need to either put it into slope intercept or into point slope. And depending on the way the question is worded or the equation is worded will help you, not really worded, but the order of it and what's provided to you will help you know which way to go. So if you look at A and look at B, these are in a format to where putting it into slope form would be the easiest and best way. We want to make sure that we have it into the y equals mx plus b form. Now, remember that b is the y-intercept, and that means that that is where the graph is going to hit on the y-axis. That's what we always plot first. Once we plot that, we can then use m to rise over run and help us find other points on that line. So then when we have multiple points, we can draw a line through those points. First, our A is not in y equals mx plus b form, but it's very close. So what we need to do is add 1 to both sides, and this is going to give us the equation y is equal to 2/3 x plus 1. The plus 1 is going to be where it hits on the x-axis, so I'm going to go from the origin and go up just 1. And then our slope, 2/3, means we're going to rise 2 and run 3. So we're going to go up 1, 2, and then we're going to go right 1, 2, 3. Now I'm just sketching, so this is obviously not going to be perfect, but when you do it on your graph paper or when you do it tomorrow, yours will look a lot nicer than this. So then from there I can go up 2 and then over 1, 2, 3. And 3 points is usually enough. If you want to do more, you can. My line's not very straight, but there's my graph. The next one I have, my first step is to try to get all the numbers over. So minus 2. I've got 1/3 y is equal to x minus 3. And then from here, I need to multiply everything by 3. Notice that I put parentheses around the x minus 3. That's going to be very important. So I have to distribute the 3 to both terms, which then gives me 3x minus 9. So when I graph this, I'm going to go all the way down to negative 9, and then I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3 over 1. There's my point. 1, 2, 3 over 1. There's my point. 1, 2, 3 over 1. There's my point. And then I can graph that, and there's my equation of the line. Alright, so here's an equation in point-slope form. Usually, when it's in point-slope form, you want to just graph it straight from there. Sometimes it can be more difficult to graph it by point-slope form, so turning it into y equals mx plus b. If we were to do that, we would have to distribute this negative 1/3, which would give us negative 1/3 x plus 4/3, and then we'd have to add 2 to this, which would give us 10/3. And having to put 10/3 on the graph is a lot more challenging. Whereas, if we graphed it in point-slope form, we're going to change the sign, so our point that we would plot would be 4, 2, and then from that we would move down 1 and right 3 for our slope. So our graph, we would go right 4 and up 2, and then we would go down 1 and over 3, and that would give us 2 points for our line. That would be a lot easier than having to find the y-intercept. 10/3 is a little difficult. I mean, that's 3 and 1/3, but if I had the option to graph 4, 2 over 0, 10/3, I'd rather graph 4, 2. Alright, so here's an example of how to write an equation with some given information. A gives you the slope 3 and the y-intercept is negative 5. So if they give you slope and y-intercept, then your best option is to do slope-intercept form. And that's going to look like y is equal to m, which is 3x, plus b, which is negative 5. So our equation with the slope of 3 and y-intercept of negative 5 is 3x minus 5. B, if this is through negative 1, 5, and it has a slope of 2. If it tells you that it's through one point and gives you the slope, then you're going to want to use point-slope form. So that's going to be y minus the y value is equal to m, which is the slope, times x minus the x value. Since that's minus 1, we're going to make that a plus 1. So that equation is y minus 5 equals 2 times x plus 1. And that is in point slope inner form. Now, this last one says through 1, 2, and 3, 2. So if they give you 2 points like this, then you're going to have to use the slope formula. So, I don't know why I did that. You're going to have to use the slope formula to find the slope, and then you can use, depending on what you find, you can use y equals mx plus b to find the y-intercept. So for this one, we've got 2 minus 2 over 3 minus 1. That's going to give us 0 over 2, which means our slope is 0. If our slope is 0, then if you go back in your notes, you'll see that a slope with 0 is a horizontal line. It's going to look like the red line right here. Since the y values were the same, that y value is going to be what's going to be our y-intercept. So this particular one is going to be y is equal to 2. And we know that because it has double y values that were the same.